Hello, how are you? Hope you're well, wherever you are in the world. Sorry, just a momentary hiccup there because I totally forgot I had to check that my microphone was working because I haven't yet had to use it today. Just one of those things. What's it like where I am at the moment? Cold and blustery again. It's not quite as cold as what it has been, so the fire's not going. I'm not going to be choking on smoke, so that's nice. Sometimes it gets a bit smoky up here because heat rises, so I'm in the nice warm part of the house. But also on top of that, you've got the whole thing of, with that, you get all the smoke. If the firewood rolls to the front of the fire grate and not all of the smoke goes up the chimney, I'm in the prime position for breathing smoke. Not quite the same as cigarette smoke anyway, thankfully. Right, so today we have a new book. It's called The House of Arden by Ms Nesbit. There's a picture up there for you if you are watching on Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, then I'm sorry, it's not there. It's just a red cover that says The House of Arden, and it's got kind of imprinted into it, embossed, implies it pokes up, or it's the opposite, it's recessed into the cover. An illustration from within the book, which isn't particularly clear. It's just a red blob on the screen, so you're not missing much so far if you're watching on YouTube. And I've just realised I didn't actually change the information on my notification, so I'm going to do that. Chat among yourselves or chat to me, I don't mind. Oh, I will turn on chat. I've just remembered I hadn't done that. So no shouting at me. I've now got it going. There you go. Chat is working, and I'm just going to, while you are chatting among yourselves, now that you can, going to put in the title of what the stream actually is. Whoops. Hitting the wrong buttons in the wrong window. That would help if I get the right one. The House of Arden by E. Nesbit. Now, we've had quite a few books by her previously. Apart from The Railway Children, all of them have been series books. They've been little series of 3 books at a time. This time, it's actually a series of 2 books. And I can't remember at the moment what the second book is called, but I'm pretty sure I will be able to tell you that soon. There you go, that's updated. And unfortunately that means that the information that I had there is not quite correct. Sorry about that. Oh well, it should update now. Right. How are we doing? The microphone is going. The camera is going. I turned the lights on. I turned the chat back on. I haven't yet sorted out a picture for the jigsaw puzzle, but I can do that on the fly. I know how to do that now, kind of. I shall just do a search for you for something that's appropriate. Let's see if I can find a ruined one. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Right, so the story behind the book that we've currently got was published in 1908, so it's another one of the earlier ones. The House of Arden was published in 1908. Like her other, perhaps better, it's very hard to find information on this book, actually. Like her other, perhaps better known tales, such as 5 Children and It, which was about the Samiad, the sand fairy. The story takes quite ordinary children of the time and plunges them into a fantastical adventure. So the Samiad series had wishes being granted and also some time travel because they were hoping to get a wish granted, a very big wish, which was the return of their parents and their youngest sibling because they were all scattered around the world at the time for various reasons. This one, in this book, shall I read you this little blurb about it? No, because I think it's going to spoil the story. I will tell you one thing, that it's something to do with family background and a crumbling castle. and that is why I am looking to see if I can find you a picture of a crumbling castle to do jigsaw puzzles with. I was hitting a button on a page and it wasn't going to the next bit because I hadn't put a page number in instead of just clicking the link. Let's see if that one's going to work. That would work. Now, I'm not sure, none of these will be the specific castle, because the castle in the story will be one that's in the author's imagination, although she may have specifically been thinking of a particular castle. I shall just get the link here so I can set it up here for you, and then I'll be able to start reading the story for you. Properties, link goes in here. And we go, okay, and I need to do the interacty thing because otherwise it's not going to do anything. I'm going to make it visible for you now, except you haven't got a link to be able to do the puzzle yet. I'm going to make this one not quite so many pieces as the last one. Yeah, I won't do any less than that. And I'll give us a nice dark background so it's easier to follow, to fit in with what we do here. And I'll get you the invitation link, copy the link, and then I can close that bit and go over here to my link handling commands. And then you can go exclamation jigsaw. Go on, do it. And the puzzle should actually let you in so you can play it. Right. Now, I'm just going to give you a couple of my other commands just so I don't have to try and remember everything I need to say, because it's going to actually now be up on the screen for you. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as the one that I've just finished, which is this one, The Dream Girl's Garden. As you can see, this physically is a very old book. Like, the spine is falling apart. The pages are not in place anymore. In fact, some of them, the illustration pages, actually come right out. And someone's even tried to stick that one in with with some sellotape, and they've at the time done a nice job, but sellotape being what it is, the adhesive breaks down and just goes hard, and it doesn't really achieve very much at all. Anyway, so usually I read ebooks, just because most of my books are in boxes at the moment, still in storage down in the storage room in our house. The storage room that is not the back of my office, that's our other storage room, which is why I actually usually have, as you can see, a green screened image behind me, an image that's put there that isn't actually there, that normally that's just a green thing behind me. Just being all technical now. Anyway, so yeah. Pause a moment, think, what was I going to say? Right, so, but if I have an actual physical copy of a book, I will use that when I'm reading to you, which sometimes means we have slight or odd pauses because I am turning pages, and also extra noises because of it. Otherwise, I usually read on my first generation iPad mini, which is a hand-me-down computer device. I love being able to keep things out of the trash. Not everything is recycled when they tell us it's going to be sent off for recycling, so rather than actually just putting it into that sort of a system, keep it going as long as possible, as long as it's safe. So because this one only goes online to download old books, these books are public domain books, and they're available through Project Gutenberg, which I shall give you, hang on, when I find the right place, the link for. Project Gutenberg is a repository for books that are now in the public domain. Now, I'm not the only person who reads public domain books on Twitch. Some of us also even put our readings over onto YouTube, which may be where you're watching this. So down in this corner here, if you're watching on Twitch, you will see there's a logo there that says Codex and then jevvz. So jevvz is my Twitter no is my Twitch handle. On Twitter I'm Jev, but here I'm jevvnz. Codex is a group of people who read public domain books online, specifically on Twitch, but sometimes also elsewhere. A fairly diverse bunch of people. I live in New Zealand, commonly known as NZ, because of the way we say our Z letters as the name of the letter. And we have teachers, we have librarians, we have people like me who work from home doing admin and photography for products and website updates and all sorts of things like that, and paying accounts and all of those icky sort of horrible work type things. But otherwise I spend time when I can reading books to people here. Some of the others in the group are actors, voice actors, audiobook narrators and readers as their jobs. So you get a really wide variety of people who you can listen to when they're reading these books. So there are two ways you can access the other readers without having to go through really complicated reading processes. One of them is you can join our Discord server, which is called Codex server. And as part of Codex, it's not just for people who are the readers, the online readers, it's also for anyone who's specifically interested in try Jigsaw, Jigsaw. Sorry, Gariki, I'd forgotten completely about possible shortcuts. My brain just wouldn't give them to me. Jigsaw. Oh yeah, no audio. So Goriki is one of my moderators. They are also one of the Codex readers. So I'm going to give you their handle here. And because he's at work at the moment, he hasn't got his audio on, and so he hasn't heard me saying that it's a different command to get the puzzle up, but I have to try and remember those ones that he's just written because I need to put some aliases in so that other people can intuitively actually bring up the Jigsaw puzzle commands. Anyway, so Goriki is also one of our readers. He reads when it's the big holidays where he currently lives. He lives in Japan. I'm pretty sure he doesn't mind me saying that. He does some other streaming as well, like games, and he's visited recently a local art museum and outdoor gardens where there's sculptures all through the gardens. It was fabulous. It was really, really intriguing to actually see all this stuff out in the beautifully manicured gardens and also some forested areas. And so because he's teaching as a job, he cares for his voice by not doing reading online during term time. The times of the year that he does do reading is when it's the big summer holidays and the big winter holidays where he's teaching, because then he's not having to worry about nurturing his voice quite to the same extent, because he has to be able to speak easily at work, and he doesn't want to wear his voice out. And when you're talking all the time, such as when you're a teacher, you've got to be a little bit careful of your voice. This is my biggest patch of talking, is when I'm actually reading to you guys. I'm at home. I have my adult son here. I have my husband here. We all work from home. One of us has chronic fatigue as well, but we don't usually spend hours and hours and hours just talking non-stop, which tends to be more what you do when you're reading a book online, as you're talking the whole time. So what else was I going to say? Other readers in Codex, I have in the links down below if you're looking on Twitch. Go follow those links to their Twitch channels, follow them on Twitch, and if you can, subscribe to them too. That's really encouraging as a streamer. And just get to know them, as well as joining us on the my brain's gone and done it again, on the Codex Discord server. Ask questions about books, talk about your favourite books, all that sort of stuff, especially if it's to do with old books, ones that are now in the public domain. As far as others will also read children's books, but most of us read books that are written not specifically for children. I'm the only one, as far as I know, who specifically reads just children's books. It's just my thing. I've got so many happy memories of reading old books when I was growing up and as an adult, and they're part of how I learned to see the world and relate to the world. I had a much broader concept of the world being huge and that we have different time zones and stuff, all because of my reading habits. I read every moment I could when I was growing up, and my family, as long as I got stuff done that needed to be done, didn't have a problem with it. They actually encouraged it, so they passed on books to me that they had grown up with. So I have books that I read when I was growing up, my parents read them, and my grandparents read them, the same physical books. So an example, although I haven't specifically read this one because my dad only just passed it on to me recently, is this one here. It's called Losing and Finding, or The Moonstone Ring, by a lady called Jenny Chappell. Now, this book here was published before July 1897. That's a little while ago now. 97. So it's about 125 years old, roughly. That's pretty old. And I'm not wearing special anti-acid gloves or anything like this. This is just a book that I can actually run my fingers over the page and feel the texture of where the printing press has pressed the ink into the pages. Just little things like that. I love the tactility of books. So a little bit more about me. As you can tell by the grey hair, I'm a bit older, and the same with the wrinkles and everything else like this. Hi Aunt, great to have you here. I'm still chatting before I start reading. We're doing a new book today. It's The House of Arden by Edith Nesbit, another book by her. She was quite a prolific author, and I've been looking forward to actually reading some more of her books, some of the ones that are less well known. The ones we've read so far are all, the series ones have been series that are known and things like that. So we're going to be starting in a minute. I do have a few tips. Oh, by the way, look, I've got a tip jar. How's that? And if I put it up nice and close, you can even scan the QR code. We've had lots of fun with QR codes recently, haven't we, Goriki? That's my coffee account, in case you were wondering. I spotted the actual jar treat time at the local, kind of like a department store, but real cheap sort of place. Anyway, I'm just going to fill up my water bottle, my water cup, just because this is all reminding me of it, but I'll do that in a minute. So if you're new here, hi, I'm Jev. I've already said that bit. I read old children's books, and I've already said that bit, but I have 3 tips. The first one is make sure you have something to drink with you, some water. This is my water bottle that doesn't tend to leak, so that's why I wave it at the camera instead of splashing it everywhere. Tip 2 is something to eat, some snacks. So drinks, snacks, and so I'm going to wave this one at you today. This is some chocolate. It's New Zealand, made in New Zealand, Aotearoa inspired, kawa and matcha white compound chocolate, which I probably won't be eating actually. I'm just going to be reading and drinking my water today. And then the third tip is, somewhere comfortable to sit or stand. Sorry, yes, I tend to be hands-on. And just background, I have ADHD and also autism, so I have a tendency to need something to fiddle with my hands. I think that's why I liked books. You can feel the pages, you can smell them, all of these other aspects that just sort of build the experience, so it's not just in your head. But I also have the ability to imagine so strongly that it's as if I was in a place. I have memories of certain things which are actually based entirely on books that I have read. They are nothing to do with actually having been in those places. The time period that they were at means that there's no way I could have ever been there, and yet I have very, very, very accurate memories of something just because of the way it was described by the author at the time, and my ability to visualize that in my head and also be able to sort of physically experience it while I'm actually visualizing it. Yay, puzzle's done. I'm going to find you another one, and I'll make it slightly harder this time, if you don't mind. So that one was Corfe Castle Ruins in Dorset, England. And Dorset was not meant to sound like an insult the way I said it. It just sort of came out that way. Sorry about that. I'll get you the next one ready to go. Yes, last time I did really well and I had these all queued up and everything. This time I haven't, just because I've had so much going on. One of which was, and this is why I said at the beginning, I hope you're well. One of the things going on which I wasn't really very happy about, but it's just one of those things I had to accept and deal with, was my dad's now got COVID. And I was having to go at a distance and administer his COVID test to see if he actually had it, the RAT test, rapid antigen test. And here, hang on, I don't type it in yet. Don't type it in yet. I'm just going to put this in here. Okay, now you can type it in. Jigsaw. Exclamation mark jigsaw. Go for it. Right. Anyway, so the jigsaw puzzle, the new one, should be available to do now. Good. Yes. Good. Got it. I think I've covered everything I needed to cover. Oh, I still didn't top up my water bottle. I drank all of that after I finished the stream last time. So I'm going to fill this up. And I use this one because it doesn't tip over quite as easily as my lovely purple one. Sadly, my lovely purple one tips over too easily. Yes, sometimes I buy things based on what they look like, not how well they work. Don't you? Doesn't everybody? Or how it feels even. Anyway, yes, I am prepared to do things that still make awkward noises like squeaky bottle lids and cup lids and stuff like that. There, it works. Must have been needing a drink. Right, I have these in place. What else? People are here. That's great. It's lovely that you're all here. Don't forget to check out the Discord server for Codex and also the links for the other Codex readers down below. Most of those will not be online at the moment because of the time zone that I'm in, that I read in. I'm in New Zealand, so it's now nearly 3:30 in the afternoon, which means that the big portion of people who tend to watch streamers who read books are in North America. Maybe they just like listening to books in North America, but a lot of them miss it when I'm live just because of the time of day, except for the ones who are usually on the West Coast in the Pacific time zone. Some of those will still be up. I know that there are others up as well, but still, you know, just your average general population tends to be in bed at night when it's sort of like 2 or 3 in the morning where they are, depending on where you are, obviously, for time zones. Right, I think I've nattered on enough and I can probably actually just get on with reading you the story. I do have a couple of pictures. Oh, there's one I didn't actually put in there. I'm just trying to look over the top of my book stand at the moment. I'm just going to add one more image to this thing here. And hopefully it's going to put it, I bet it hasn't. No, it hasn't. Right, we will put this here and then I'm going to move it. You'll see your puzzle again in a minute. It's okay, don't panic. There. Ooh, why is that so big? That shouldn't be that big. This is meant to be down here. And this is meant to be over here. I don't know. Beyond me. Right, and I'm showing you a ruined castle. And we are going to find out. This is just my idea of giving you something to look at for an intro to what we're going to do, apart from looking at the puzzles up there in the corner. Right, so I'm going to turn that off again and we'll get on with the story. There are a few illustrations. I've managed to download some of them, but just, pardon me, I haven't got all of them done yet. I will get there. So, The House of Arden by Ms Nesbit. And the illustrations are by H.R. Miller, who has done some illustrations for her books, with other books of hers that we have read. So there you go. And it is dedicated to Joseph Bland, whoever he was. In Dymchurch is where she was writing at the time. Dymchurch, we've come across before. Dymchurch was in some of the other books, the Samoyed books, and also Rudyard Kipling's either Puck of Pook's Hill or Rewards and Fairies referred to Dymchurch. The Dymchurch Flit, which was when the fairy folk departed the British Isles in his stories. So a significant place, apparently. And the book was published in 1908. So here we go. Chapter 1, Arden's Lord. Let's see where this goes. Intriguing. Have to go through the pages and pages and pages of bits and pieces that they always put at the beginning of a book. So here we go. Yeah, we're going to read now. Right. Just wondering if there was anything else I needed to tell you beforehand. No, that's it. Oh, yeah, I do sometimes say words one way and then I'll say them again another way a bit later on, just because that's the way my brain works with words. And also because the other disappointed look was because my coffee is nearly empty. I'm just going to have the last mouthful. It's always sad when your coffee is empty. I say words because the way I learnt them, probably because I made them up when I was reading them, sounding them out. Some words I got right, and other ones I learnt to say them differently when I was a bit older, because I came across them at school or somebody else said them and I thought, well, maybe I meant to say it differently, so I said it differently. But sometimes if there's a word I come across when I'm reading that I haven't actually read before, I'll come out with a way of saying it, and then it'll just sort of change each time. And don't expect me to give you decent accents either. I speak the way I speak, and occasionally if I'm trying to indicate that somebody in a story has an accent because the way the words are written on the page, I will modify the way I'm saying their part. But that will probably also change as we get through even just that one chapter, or even a paragraph or two. It's just, that's the way my brain works. So, sorry, I've got just getting a loose eyelash out of the way before it causes problems, and we shall get on with reading. So, Chapter 1 of A House of Arden, which is a story for children, that's the subtitle, I don't know why, by Ms Nesbit. And Chapter 1 is called Arden's Lord. It had been a great house once, with farms and fields, money and jewels, with tenants and squires and men-at-arms. The head of the house had ridden out 3 days' journey to meet King Henry at the boundary of his estate. Now that should give us a time frame if we knew our English history, which I don't, because I didn't grow up in 1940s or 50s or 30s or 60s England. I grew up in New Zealand. And we don't really learn a lot of English history or even British history. But the people that the author was writing for at the time would have known exactly when this was. Had ridden out 3 days' journey to meet King Henry at the boundary of his estate, and the king had ridden back with him to lie in the tall state bed in the castle guest chamber. The heir of the house had led his following against Cromwell. Younger sons of the house had fought in foreign lands to the honour of England and the gilding and re-gilding of the perishable gold of glory of the old Arden name. There had been Ardens in Saxon times, and there were Ardens still, but few and impoverished. The lands were gone, and the squires and men-at-arms, the castle itself and the squires and men-at-arms gone. The castle itself was roofless, and its unglazed windows stared blankly across the fields of strangers that stretched right up to the foot of its grey, weather-worn walls, and of the male Ardens there were now 2 only. An old man and a child. So there you go. That's who we're going to be learning about. Let's have another quick look at this castle again. This one doesn't really have the sort of windows that she's talking about, does she? Maybe we can choose a different picture for castle windows. What about this one? Oopsie, that's another one of those extra big pictures, and we shall resize it so you can see it. And there you go. See? Empty windows looking out. Well, this is actually looking into it from inside it kind of thing, but you know, you get the idea. We did a lot of seeing that sort of thing when we were travelling around in England. It's a wonderful place for seeing ruins of various things. So we'll carry on. Oh, nearly there on that puzzle. I'm going to have to get another one ready, aren't I? Oh dear. I actually know where this one is. This one that you guys are doing in the puzzle up there is Dunluce Castle. That's in Ireland on the west coast. We didn't actually cross. You can't really see it in that picture. But over on the left-hand side, there's a bridge that goes across to the castle. And at the time of day that we were there, it was after it was closed for the day. And so you couldn't actually go across to the castle. But all of that patch, the gap between the grass that's up close in that picture there and where the castle itself is a big, there's a rocky bay where the land is all fallen down into it and the sea comes in through part of it. So once upon a time, it was quite a secure place for the castle. Wonderful, excellent. And I shall find you the next picture. And if you haven't done this sort of thing before, you can exactly guess how I've come up with my choice of which sort of puzzles you are doing at the moment. If you know the page that I'm getting them from, you will know that it's actually just looking at puzzles on the site that meet whatever my theme is for what we're currently reading. And sometimes I have to be a little bit vague with the way I'm choosing those. Just because of the way things like that work. I think that's going to work for... Oh, yeah. Why have I got that and that there? Most peculiar. Hang on. My brain's gone. I'm going to the wrong bit first. Put that in there. Yep, that's the right bit. Now we come back here to this bit and get that bit. No. When you go control, no. When you go control V instead of control C, and it's like, no, that's not what I wanted. Thankfully, when you hit escape, it kind of does it for you. It fixes it. And I need this bit, and I need this bit. Copy the link, get that bit out of the way, the promotional info, and give you guys, I pasted the wrong thing in here before, give you guys this, the command, and I've saved it, so the command is now ready to go. You can hit that, exclamation mark, jigsaw, and you can do the next one if you would like. There you go. Great to have you here. My gun is huge. Great to see you again. It's been a while since I've actually seen you when you've been streaming, I think. And also there's a couple of other places where we interact elsewhere on the internet, you know, like to do with streaming stuff. I know a really wide variety of people, actually. I've just realised reasonably recently. And mostly it's just because of my amount of time I spend online. But I like the range of friends that I have. It's good. Now, I'm just wondering. Right. I think that's it. Yes. You can pull up the puzzle now when you're ready. Oops, I'm back. I need to get back onto the tab that I was meant to be on. And I'm now doing a bit of housekeeping as well because I'm here and that's what I do. I just need to check to see if somebody who is on, try with a G instead of a D, somebody who's on our channel at the moment is actually a person or a bot. No, that looks reasonably okay, so we're not going to worry too much about that. So that's good. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, if you are a streamer, look after your own community, because if you get a whole bunch of people, apparent people on your channel who actually aren't people but are bots, there are several things that they can do. They can steal subs effectively. Somebody donates a sub, gifts a sub to somebody else. If you've got bots sitting there in your channel that are not admin style bots, but nefarious ones, they can receive gifted subs, which means that your real people who are listening to you, your real people who are loyal followers who keep coming back, are missing out on gifted subs. And I think that's quite sad and disappointing for them when somebody has put their own money towards it. But the other thing that can happen is some of the bots are quite nasty. They can harvest people's information. So learn to look after your community, and your community will actually flourish in a way that they won't if you just assume, oh, they're just bots, they're not doing anything, because they actually are. You just aren't necessarily seeing what they're doing. So you can get a hold of me either through Discord or on Twitch or any of those other places if you're not sure about what I'm talking about. If you've got further questions, I won't get into details now. Not a problem that you got the spelling wrong. I do that all the time. And it's like, oh, is this command going to work? Didn't work. Oh, maybe it was the spelling. Anyway, so we're going to carry on with the story. Actually, yeah. The House of Arden by Edred Nesbit. We are reading the first chapter, which is Arden's Lord, and we got to this last line of a paragraph, which is, I've left you dangling. The last sentence was, and of the male Ardens there were now known two only, an old man and a child. And this is where our story is going to start kicking off. The old man was Lord Arden, the head of the house, and he lived lonely in a little house built of the fallen stones that time and Cromwell's round shot had cast from the castle walls. So the castle had fallen during Cromwell's civil war in England. The child was Edred Arden, and he lived in a house in a clean, windswept town on a cliff. I wonder if this is down on the south coast of England, just because she seems to write a lot about places set down there. It was a bright-faced house with bow windows and a green balcony that looked out over the sparkling sea. It had 3 neat white steps and a brass knocker, pale and smooth with constant rubbing. It was a pretty house, and it would have been a pleasant house, but for one thing, the lodgers. For I cannot conceal from you any longer that Edred Arden lived with his aunt, and that his aunt let lodgings. That's often how people used to make do, to be able to, have a little bit of income when there wasn't a lot of stuff available at the time, as you took in lodgers or boarders, depending on how you want to phrase it. People that aren't related to you, people who need somewhere to live, and they are going to pay for it, but it can be really inconvenient and not always good. Anyway, so we'll find. Hopefully it's not going to have any particularly disastrous consequences here. We'll find out. Letting lodgings is one of the most unpleasant of all possible ways of earning your living, and I advise you to try every other honest way of earning your living before you take to that. Because people who go to the seaside and take lodgings seem somehow much harder to please than the people who go to hotels. That actually makes sense, yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way before. They want ever so much more waiting on. They want so many meals, and at such odd times they ring the bell almost all day long. They bring in sand from the shore in every fold of their clothes, and it shakes out of them on the carpets and the sofa cushions and everything in the house. Now, this is before the days of vacuum cleaners, and so sand, gritty sand everywhere. Oh, sorry, that's just uncomfortable. They hang long streamers of wet seaweed against the pretty roses of the new wallpaper, and their wash-hand basins are always full of sea anemones and shells. Also, they are noisy. Their boots seem to be always on the stairs, no matter how bad a headache you may have, and when you give them their bill, they always think it's too much, no matter how little it may be. So do not let lodgings if you can help it. There you go. Ms Arden could not help it. It happened like this. Edred and his sister were at school. Did I tell you that he had a sister? Well, he had, and her name was Elfrida. And I am going to take a slight aside here and give you some names. Edred is a male name, it's a masculine name, and it's Anglo-Saxon, and it means rich counsel. And I'm telling you this because sometimes authors choose names because they sound good, but also they have meaning that's relevant for the story. Rich counsel. There you go. And her name is Elfrida, which is feminine, and it's an English name. It's originally it comes from an Old English name, which is kind of Anglo-Saxon, the particular usage it came from. Do not hold me to that with your historic knowings. And it means elf strength. Ooh. That sort of implies that there might be a little bit of magic in this story. Elf strength. Rich counsel and elf strength. Let's see how this fits into our story. So, Edred had a sister, and her name was Elfrida. Miss Arden, that's their aunt, lived near the school so that she could see the children often. She was getting her clothes ready for her wedding, and the gentleman who was going to marry her was coming home from South America, where he had made a fortune. Ooh, nice. The children's father was coming home from South America too, with the fortune he had made, for he and Miss Arden's sweetheart were business partners. The children and their aunt talked whenever they met of the glorious time that was coming, and how when Father and Uncle Jim, they called him Uncle Jim already, came home, they were all going to live in the country and be happy ever after. Sounds like there's not mum in this story. And then the news came that Father and Uncle Jim had been captured by brigands, and all the money was lost too, and there was nothing left but the house on the cliff. Oh dear. The collapse of your dreams. So Miss Arden took the children from the expensive school in London, and they all went to live in the cliff house. And as there was no money to live on, and no other way of making money to live on except letting lodgings, Miss Arden let them, like the brave lady she was, and did it well. And then came the news that Father and Uncle Jim were dead. And for a time the light of life went out in Cliff House. This was 2 years ago, but the children had never got used to the lodgers. They hated them. At first they had tried to be friendly with the lodgers' children, but they soon found that the lodgers' children considered Edred and Elfrida very much beneath them. We're paying to be here, so therefore we're better than you. I've known children like that, and looked down on them accordingly. And very often the lodgers' children were the sort of children on whom anybody might have looked down if it were right and kind to look down on anyone. And when Master Reginald Potts of Peckham puts his tongue out at you on the parade, that's the waterfront road, roadside walkway area by the beach, the parade, puts his tongue out at you on the parade and says right before everybody, "Lodgings, yeah!" It's hard to feel quite the same to him as you did before, so try as you might to be polite and kind. Doesn't really work very well. When they were lodgers, and then when there were lodgers, and there nearly always were, for the house was comfortable and people who had been once came again, the children and their aunt had to live in the very top and the very bottom of the house, in the attics and the basement, in fact. When there were no lodgers, they used all the rooms in turn to keep them aired. Now that makes a lot of sense to me. But the children liked the big basement parlour room best, because there all the furniture had belonged to dead and gone Ardens, and all the pictures on the walls were of Ardens, dead and gone. The rooms that the lodgers had were furnished with a new sort of furniture that had no stories belonging to it, such as belonged to the old polished oak tables and bureaus that were in the basement parlour. I'm wondering if at some stage Ms Nesbit has actually lived in a house which has had a well-used basement, because the children in one of our other books, that's where their nursery was, the room that they spent when they were not at school during the day was actually in the basement. I think that was the first of the Samoyed stories, actually. Anyway, yes, it was. And here she is again giving us a key room in the book as the background to the story, being in the basement. So I think that she's probably lived in a house where there was a big basement room that was important to the people. Edred and Elfrida went to school every day and learned reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, history, spelling, and useful knowledge, all of which they hated quite impartially, which means they hated the whole lot, one thing as much as another. The only part of the lessons they liked was the homework, when, if Aunt Edith had time to help them, geography became like adventures, history like school books, and even arithmetic suddenly seemed to mean something. "I wish you could teach us always," said Edred, very inky and interested for the first time in the exports of China. "It does seem so silly trying to learn things that are only words in books." Yeah, especially textbooks. "I wish I could," said Aunt Edith, "but I can't do 29,017 things all at once, and—" A bell jangled. "That's the 17th time since tea." She got up and went into the kitchen. "There's the bell again, my poor Eliza. Never mind. Answer the bell, but don't answer them, whatever they say. It doesn't do a bit of good, and it sometimes prevents their giving you half-crowns when they leave." "I do love it when they go," said Elfrida. So Eliza is probably the lady who works in the kitchen and as staff for the lodgers. "Yes," said her aunt, "a cab top-heavy with luggage, the horse's nose turned stationward. It is a heavenly sight when the bill is paid, but then I'm just as glad to see the luggage coming. Chickens, when my ship comes home, we'll go and live on a desert island somewhere where there aren't any cabs and we won't have any lodgers in our cave." She sounds like a pretty good aunt, actually, instead of one of those horrible aunts like we've had in some of the other stories. Or I feel like we've had. "When I grow up," said Edred, "I shall go across the sea and look for your ship and bring it home. I shall take a steam tug and steer it myself." "Then I shall be captain," said Elfrida. "No, I shall be captain." "You can't if you steer." "Yes, I can." "No, you can't." "Yes, I can." "Well, do then," said Elfrida. "And while you're doing it, I know you can't, I shall dig in the garden and find a gold mine, and Aunt Edith will be rolling in money when you come back, and she won't want your silly old ship." Sound like typical siblings to me. Don't know about you. "Spelling next," said Aunt Edith. "How do you spell disagreeable?" "Which of us?" asked Edred acutely. "Both," said Aunt Edith, trying to look very severe, but trying not to laugh, I would say, if she's trying to look very severe. "When you are a child, you always dream of your ship coming home, of having £100 or £1,000 or £1,000,000 to spend as you like. My favourite dream, I remember, was £1,000 and an express understanding that I was not to spend it on anything useful." I like that idea. "And when you have dreamed of your £1,000,000 or your 1,000 or your 100, you spend happy hour on hour in deciding what presents you will buy for each of the people you are fond of, and in picturing their surprise and delight at your beautiful presents and your wonderful generosity. I think very few of us spend our dream fortunes entirely on ourselves." Of course, we buy ourselves a motor bicycle straight away, and footballs, and bats, and dolls with real hair, and real china tea sets, and large boxes of mixed chocolates, and Treasure Island, the book, and all the books that Mrs. Ewing ever wrote. But when we have done that, we begin to buy things for other people. I wonder who Mrs. Ewing is. Shall we just do a little wee rabbit trail here and see who Mrs. Ewing is? That would probably be Juliana Horatia Ewing, British author. She was only 43 when she died. Oh my goodness. Well done! Stone Castle ruins in Ireland. Another one in Ireland. Wow. So, Mrs. Ewing was an English writer of children's stories whose writings display a sympathetic insight into children's lives, an admiration for things military, and a strong religious faith. I'm guessing the suggestion that one would want her books is because she understood children. I'm going to have to look her up and see if I can find any books that she wrote, because she sounds intriguing. I do know that I've been enjoying, of most of our authors that we have read, Ms Nesbit, who I'm reading at the moment, has been one of the ones I've particularly enjoyed, partly just because she seems to get what children are like, which is great. I love that. Shall we find another castle puzzle? Yeah, we're going for castles at the moment. This one is a castle in the distance, and you've got a village or train station or something in between. I shall get the link for you and put it in here, and then I shall get the other link for you. Which is going to be here. I'm going to leave it with that many puzzle pieces, and I shall get the sharing link. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Thank you. Put that one out of the way. Put that one out of the way. Open up this. Put the link in here, and then you can type in jigsaw. Should work now. There you go. When you're ready. You don't have to if you don't want to. That's okay. Just if you want to. Right. So we found out about the author, Mrs. Ewing, who wrote children's books, all the books that Mrs. Ewing ever wrote. But when we have done that, we begin to buy things for other people. It is a beautiful dream, but too often by the time it comes true, up to £100 or 1,000, we forget what we used to mean to do with our money and spend it all in stocks and shares and eligible building sites and fat cigars and fur coats. In other words, we've become boring adults of the particular era that the book's written. If I were young again, I would sit down and write a list of all the kind things that I meant to do when my ship came home. And if my ship ever did come home, I would read that list and... But the parlour bell is ringing for the 8th time, and the front door bell is ringing too, and the first floor is ringing also, and so is the second floor, and Eliza is trying to answer all 4 bells at once, always a most difficult thing to do. Oh dear. The front doorbell was rung by the postman. He brought 3 letters. The first was a bill for mending the lid of the cistern, this on which Edred had recently lighted a fire, fortified by an impression that wood could not burn if there was water on the other side. Now, a cistern in this right, we'll try that again. A cistern in this particular context, you can see I was getting stumbled on those sounds. A cistern means a fixed container space for water. So this is probably like in New Zealand we would have a water tank to supply water to the house that has a lid on it, and And so in this situation, that's what it is. A cistern is also the little tank that you have on the back of a toilet for being able to flush it. But that's not the context for this one. So Edred had recently lighted a fire fortified by the impression that wood would not burn if there were water on the other side. A totally false impression, as the charred cistern lid proved. Yeah, because it was made out of wood. The second was an inquiry whether Ms Arden would take a clergyman in at half the usual price, because he had a very large family which had all just had measles. Half price and a lot of them. Oh dear, please say no. Please, dear aunt, say no. I'm requesting on behalf of your niece and nephew and your staff. And the third was the letter, which is really the seed and beginning and backbone and rhyme and reason of this story. Edred had got the letters from the postman, and he stood and waited while Aunt Edith read them. He collected postmarks and had not been able to make out by the thick half-light of the hall gas, that's the gas lamp in the hall, whether any of these were valuable. Sorry, I'm just checking things over there. Whenever I tab out and hear you read lines about an aunt, I'm like, well, wait, what do I need to... Yes, I know. Especially because I always call you aunt. I nearly, when you first turned up in the stream, I nearly called you auntie, because it's not uncommon in New Zealand when it's someone who is of a similar generation, you know, when you're talking to children, a similar generation to the adult speaker, to refer to, even if someone isn't related, as an auntie when they're female, or uncle when they're male, even if they're not specifically related. It's more, the context of that is more specific to the Maori population in Northland, which is where my parents have spent quite a bit of time. So I'm quite used to people being aunties and uncles and things like that, even if they're not related. So that's why I nearly called you auntie when you first arrived. And then I read it and I thought, oh, I probably should just say aunt. Anyway. Reading, finding the place on the page. I didn't say that before, did I? I often get lost in the page while I'm reading a sentence. In the middle of, with my eyes on the actual words, halfway through a sentence, I can actually lose whereabouts on the line I am, because I am wonderfully ADHD, and that's what my brain sometimes does. Right. So he hadn't been able to make out the postmark, not the stamps, but the postmark in the half light of the hall gas lamp, if any of the postmarks on these letters were valuable. The third letter had a very odd effect on Aunt Edith. She read it once, rubbed her hand across her eyes, then she got up and stood under the chandelier, which wanted new burners badly, and so burned with a very unlighting light, and read it again. Then she read it a third time, and then she said, "Oh, what is it, Auntie?" Elfrida asked anxiously. "Is it the taxes?" It had been the taxes once, and Elfrida had never forgotten. If you don't understand what this means, ask your poorest relations, who are also likely to be your nicest, and if they don't know, ask the washerwoman. Taxes are very not nice. "No, it's not the taxes, darling," said Aunt Edith. "On the contrary." Oh, that sounds good. Sorry, once more. Fluff. Eyelashes. Sorry. Well, this is the ADHD does things with words in my brain, and the autism, I have hypersensitivity to some things. Not like allergies, but I notice things, I feel things quite strongly at times. So sometimes I will feel like I've got a bit of fluff somewhere on my face, and somebody else can look and they can't see it. Then I take my glasses off and get really close up to a mirror, and I finally find it, and it'll be the finest, thinnest fluff from the cat. He's got normal for cat fur, but he's also got some ultra fine stuff, which people don't see, but I can feel it when it's against my skin. He's a lovely cat, but he does occasionally leave a bit of fluff. So that's probably what that was. Total aside, totally irrelevant, but in case you're wondering why I keep taking my glasses off. Right. "No, it's not taxes, darling," said Aunt Edith. "On the contrary." I don't know what the contrary or opposite of taxes any more than the children did, but I am sure it is something quite nice. And so were they. Oh, Auntie, I am so glad, they both said, and said it several times before they asked again, what is it? I'm not quite sure, but I think it's a ship come home. Oh, just a quite tiny little bit of a ship, a toy boat, hardly more than that. But I must go up to London tomorrow the first thing and see if it really is a ship, and if so, what sort of ship it is. Mrs. Blake shall come in, and you'll be as good as gold, children, won't you? Yes, oh yes, said the two, and not make booby traps for the butcher or go on the roof in your nightgowns or play red Indians in the dustbin or make apple pie beds for the lodgers, Aunt Edith asked, hastily mentioning a few of the little amusements which had lately enlivened the spare time of her nephew and niece. Some children you have to be very specific with what you are banning, because otherwise they'll say, but you didn't tell me not to do that. And I think she's learnt that one. No, we really won't, said Edred, and we'll truly try not to think of anything new and amusing, he added with a real self-sacrifice. I must go by the 8:30 train. I wish I could think of some way of amusing you, she ended, for she was too kind to say of keeping you out of mischief for the day, which was what she really thought. I'll bring you something jolly for your birthday, Edred. Wouldn't you like to spend the day with nice Mrs. Hammond? Oh, no, said Edred, and added on the inspiration of the moment, why, mayn't we have a picnic, just Elf and me, on the Downs to keep my birthday? It doesn't matter it being the day before, does it? You said we were too little last summer and we should this, and now it is this, and I have grown 2 inches and Elf's grown 3, so we'll be 5 inches taller than when you said we weren't big enough. Now you see how useful arithmetic is, said the aunt. Very well, you shall, only wear your old clothes and always keep in sight of the road. Now she said about on the Downs. Yes, we are talking about the south coast of England. So you have the North Downs and the South Downs. The North Downs are south of London and run across sort of like a crescent shape. And then you've got the Weald, which is the land in between the North Downs and the South Downs. And then you've got the South Downs. And part of one end of the South Downs is where you've got the White Cliffs of Dover. That's the end of some of those hill shapes. And the Downs are big, long hills, and they're made out of chalk, the original stone type chalk. Quite intriguing. We've talked about it in other books. You can go and have a listen to them over on YouTube on one of the playlists. I'm trying to think of if there's one. I'm pretty sure that the Chalk Downs are talked about in one of the Rudyard Kipling ones reread. So go and have a listen to those. Either Puck of Pook's Hill or the other one, which is Rewards and Fairies. But maybe also in one of the other books. I'm pretty sure it's Rewards and Fairies. Go and have a look. Playlist. YouTube. Actually, I'll give you the link for YouTube. There you go. Right, carrying on. Now you see how useful arithmetic is, said the aunt. Very well, you shall. Only wear your old clothes. So obviously they have an inclination, a tendency to get a little bit dirty because of the sort of play that they do, or get things torn because they get caught on things. That sounds familiar. And always keep in sight of the road, yes, because there's long distances between the road and it's very easy to get lost, even though the hills don't seem very complicated. Yes, you can have a whole holiday. And now to bed. And oh, there's that bell again. Oh, poor dear Eliza. And I must apologise for the noise of the rain on the roof. There's not a lot I can do about it, but yeah, that's what you're hearing. That's the wind and the rain on the chimney, just there, 2 metres away from me. A Clapham cub belonging to one of the lodgers happened to be going up to bed just as Edred and Elfrida came through the baize door that shut off the basement from the rest of the house. Hi Q, great to see you here. Wonderful. Yes, I love the rain, except that it's a bit noisy on my chimney, that's all. Clapham cub, I'm guessing it's a child of one of the people from London, probably around Clapham. So it's just kind of a semi-derogatory term about them. Green baize. What do you know about green baize? Now, I've always remembered green baize doors as being the dividing doors between the servants' quarters and the more well-off people who they work for in, big houses, fancy houses. So we're going to find out what it means. Baize is also the name of the fabric used on snooker and pool tables. It's that fuzzy one, green baize. So let's find out what it says about what a green baize door is. And the reason we do all this is because we're interested, and there's no point in having weird words and phrases in books that we never find out what they're about, because otherwise we just carry on reading and we don't get the extra information, the understanding of what's going on. It's a coarse woolen or variation for cheaper cloth, similar in texture to felt, but it's more durable. That makes sense. Now I understand. I'm guessing it has an effect of, when it's put as a covering to some padding, helping to reduce sound transfer. Let's see, there should be something here about doors. Find. Yes, here you go. Idioms and catchphrases. At one time, the green baize door, a door to which cloth had been tacked to deaden noise, there you go, in a house, separated the servants' quarters from the family's living quarters. Hence the phrase's usage as a metonym for domestic service. Okay, fine. That's cool. Green baize door was the separation between the servants' quarters, or in this case, the lodgers' quarters, and the people who lived there's quarters, and the family of the grand house, or in this case, the lodgers' quarters. So there you go. We've got that one out of the way, and I'll read that sentence again, and I'll also find you a new puzzle to do. So that's Corfe Castle Station. That we've got there. In England, the photographer lies through a lens, and it looks quite sweet. The train station in the village of Corfe Castle is maintained in a period setting, including stacks of luggage from the 1940s and vintage ads of products from the past. The station also hosts a steam train that carries passengers to Swanage. Corfe Castle is located near the southern coast of England. The castle ruins on the hill in the background is the village's namesake. Right above the edge of the picture frame here, there's a very, very vague outline that looks a little bit like a chimney, but it's actually the ruins of the castle in the background. And I shall get you another picture to do, if you are happy to do them. You don't have to do them. This one, I think, is somewhere else completely. Interaction, color, share. Copy. Get that one out of my way. Oh, hang on. There was one bit I forgot to click on. That bit for you. And put it into my link thing. And ready to go. Jigsaw can go. Jigsaws are go. There you go. We'll carry on with the story. So, green baize door. I'll read that sentence again. Oh, there's that bell again. Poor dear Eliza. A Clapham cub belonging to one of the lodgers happened to be going up to bed just as Edred and Elfrida came through the baize door that shut off the basement from the rest of the house. So that's so that the lodgers know this is the part of the house that's just for the people who work here. They wouldn't be interested in going there anyway. He put his tongue out through the banisters at the children of the house and said, "Little slavies." The cub thought he could get up the stairs before the two got round the end of the banisters, but he had not counted on the long arm of Elfrida, whose hand shot through the banisters and caught the cub's leg and held on to it till Edred had time to get round the banisters. The two boys struggled up the stairs together and then rolled together from top to bottom, where they were picked up and disentangled by their relations. I think it would be a good idea for the children to be out on the hills tomorrow. Except for this little incident, going to bed was uneventful. So apparently that's kind of normal. Next morning, Aunt Edith went off by the 8:30 train. The children's school satchels were filled not with books, but with buns. Instead of exercise books, there were sandwiches, and in the place of inky pencil boxes were 2 magnificent boxes of peppermint creams, which had cost a whole shilling each. That would have been a lot. That's a lot of peppermint creams. And had been recklessly bought by Aunt Edith in the agitation of the parting hour when they saw her off at the station. Ooh, that's a special treat. They went slowly up the red brick paved sidewalk that always looks as though it had just been washed, and when they got to the top of the hill they stopped and looked at each other. "It can't be wrong," said Edred. "She never told us not to," said Elfrida. "Oh dear, I think it sounds like there might be some trouble brewing. They've had an idea of something they want to do. They know that quite possibly their aunt would have said no if they had asked, but she didn't specifically say no, but then I don't think they asked." "She never told us not to," said Elfrida. "I've noticed," said Edred, "that when grown-up people say they'll see about anything you want, it never happens." "I've noticed that too," said Elfrida. "Auntie always said she'd see about taking us there." "Yes, she did." "We won't be mean and sneaky about it," Edred insisted, though no one had suggested that he would be mean and sneaky. "We'll tell Auntie directly she gets back." "Hi, Kel, great to have you here. Yeah, enjoy the jigsaw. I hope you do anyway. So, I'll carry on. "We won't be mean and sneaky about it," Edred insisted, though no one had suggested that he would be mean and sneaky. "We'll tell Auntie directly she gets back." "Of course," said Elfrida, rather relieved, for she had not felt at all sure that Edred meant to do this. "After all," said Edred, "it's our castle. We ought to go and see the castle of our race. That's what it's called. It calls it in Cliffgate and its environment and environs. So the village or town that they live in is Cliffgate, and the castle has some connection with the children. I say, let's call it a pilgrimage. The satchels will do for packs, and we can get halfpenny walking sticks with that penny of yours. We can put peas in our shoes if you like," he added generously. So the children have learnt in part of their school history, and we've come across this before with some of the other stories we've read, that the pilgrims, when they were making a pilgrimage somewhere, they would have a walking staff, that's a tall stick, as a walking stick to help with their walking, and as a way of kind of doing penance for whatever it was that they're doing the pilgrimage for, they would make it uncomfortable on themselves as a reminder of the fact that they are trying to put their hearts right with God, or whatever it is that they're paying for having done, by putting a dried pea in their shoes. If you've ever walked in shoes with having a stone in them, very, very uncomfortable. Not pleasant at all. Not something I would recommend. Not even putting a pea in your shoe, because it's not a soft, fresh pea, it is a dried pea. They are like small bits of gravel or stones. We should have to go back for them, the peas, and I don't expect the split kind count anyhow. Oh, that's true. Split peas aren't as big and sharp. "And perhaps they'd hurt," said Elfrida doubtfully, which is what they're actually there for in your shoes. "And I want my penny for—" She stopped, warned by her brother's frown. "All right then," she ended. "You can have it, only give me half next time you get a penny. That's only fair." "I'm not usually unfair," said Edred coldly. Don't let's be pilgrims. But I should like to, said Elfrida. Edred was obstinate. No, he said, we'll just walk. Oh, he's saving the penny. So they just walked, rather dismally. The town was getting thinner, like the tract of stocking that surrounds a hole. Stockings in the story are what we would call socks, but long socks, ones that come up to just below your knee. They were not so strongly factory made as what they are now. They didn't have nylon in them, so they wore out a little bit more easily. And so when you get a hole in the bottom of your sock, on the bottom of your foot here, the hole goes through, but the area around it is also quite thin. And so she's using this visual that the readers at the time that she was writing about would totally understand, that the town thins out as it gets to the edge. The town was getting thinner, like the tract of stocking that surrounds a hole. The houses were further apart and had large gardens. In one of them, a maid was singing to herself as she shook out the mats, a thing which somehow maids don't do much in towns. Good luck, says I to my sweetheart, for I will love you true, and all the while we've got to part, my luck shall go with you, is what she was singing. That's lucky for us, said Elfrida amiably. And I actually have a picture for you, yay! There, oh, that's right, it's because it's been resized. Sorry, because of the other one that I had before, which was too big. Move this over slightly so you can see it properly. They went slowly up the red brick paved sidewalk. So that's there. So this is the main part of town is back there below them, down the hill below them that way. There's one of the maids at one of the other houses scrubbing the front steps, because that was a done thing. That's why she's got a bucket there. She's kneeling on a cloth of some sort so her uniform doesn't get destroyed, and the children are talking to each other as they go up the hill. Elfrida is actually the older of the two children, just in case you were wondering, because it doesn't say it so far in our story. But this is Edred and Elfrida going up the hill as they're departing town. And I shall just turn that off so I am not distracted by it and carry on reading. We're not her silly sweetheart, said Edred. No, but we heard her sing it and he wasn't here, so he couldn't. Okay, whatever. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my mouse so it's not flashing things at me while I have it in the wrong place. No, but we heard her sing it and he wasn't here, so he couldn't. He couldn't hear it. There's a signpost. I wonder how far we've gone. I'm getting awfully tired. You'd better have been pilgrims, said Edred. They never get tired, however many peas they have in their shoes. I don't think that's true, actually. I know someone who's just done the equivalent of a pilgrimage. The route that they walked was a pilgrimage walk. And, they have said it was very tiring at some days. I will now, said Elfrida. You can't, said Edred. It's too late. We're miles and miles from the stick shop. Because in the Downs, people, when you go and stay for holidays down in the South Downs on the coast, people would go to the beach and go swimming at the seaside, but they would also go for long walks in the Downs on the hills. So therefore, obviously, you have a shop that sells walking sticks for actual, that sort of walking, not just elderly needing a cane. Very well, I shan't go on, said Elfrida. You got out of bed the wrong side this morning. I've tried to soft answer you as hard as ever I could all the morning, and I'm not going to try any more, so there. Don't then, said Edred bitterly. Go along home if you like. You're only a girl. I'd rather be only a girl than what you are, said she. And what's that, I should like to know, said he. Elfrida stopped and shut her eyes tight. Don't, she said. I won't be cross. I won't be cross. Pax, drop it. Don't let's what? Quarrel about nothing, said Elfrida, opening her eyes and walking on very fast. We're always doing it. Auntie says it's a habit. If boys are so much splendider than girls, they ought to be able to stop when they like. Oh, and by the way, pax means peace. Suppose they don't like, said he, kicking his boots in the thick white dust. Well, said she, I'll say I'm sorry first. Will that do? I was just going to say it myself, said Edred in aggrieved tones. Come on, he added more generously. Here's the signpost. Let's see what it says. It said quite plainly, and without any nonsense about it, that they had come 1 3/4 miles, adding most unkindly that it was 8 miles to Arden Castle. But it said it was 1/4 mile to Ardenhurst Station. Okay. Let's go by train, said Edred grandly. No money, said Elfrida, very forlornly indeed. Aha, said Edred. Now you'll see. I'm not mean about money. I brought my new florin. I know what a florin is. A florin is 2 shillings. And I know because we used to have old florins as well as new 20-cent pieces. When New Zealand went from pounds, shillings and pence currency to modern decimal currency, they did the same sizes and the same coloured coins, but called them the newer names and had them representing the same sort of value. And I was very familiar with them because we used to use the 20-cent pieces and the florins, and it actually said that it was a florin. But I suppose most people these days wouldn't know what a florin is, and I'm just wondering if our modern 20-cent pieces are a lot smaller, because the value of 20 cents is not very much now, and so therefore they don't want to have too much value in the actual piece of metal that you hand over as a coin. Anyway, so I brought my new florin. Oh, Edred, said the girl, stricken with remorse, you are noble. Pah, said the boy, and his ears grew red with mingled triumph and modesty. That's nothing. Come on. So it was from the train that the pilgrims got their first sight of Arden Castle. It stands up boldly on the cliff where it was set to keep off foreign foes and guard the country round about it. But of all its old splendour there is now nothing but the great walls that the grasses and wild flowers grow on, and round towers whose floors and ceilings have fallen away, and roofless chambers where owls build, and brambles and green ferns grow thick and strong. The children walked to the castle along the cliff path, where the skylarks were singing like mad up in the pale sky, and the bean fields, where the bees were busy, gave out the sweetest scent in the world, a scent that got itself mixed with the scent of the brown seaweed that rises and falls in the wash of the tide on the rocks at the cliff foot. Let's have dinner here, said Elfrida, when they had reached the top of a little mound from which they could look down on the castle. So they had it. 2 bites of sandwich and 1 of peppermint cream. That was the rule. They're probably rationing themselves so that they have enough for when they're hungry later. And all the time they were munching, they looked down on the castle and loved it more and more. Don't you wish it was real and we lived in it? Elfrida asked when they had eaten as much as they wanted. Not of peppermint creams, of course, but they had finished them. It is real. What there is of it. Yes, but I mean if it was a house with chimneys and fireplaces and doors with bolts and glass in the windows. I wonder if we could get in, said Edred. We might climb over, said Elfrida, looking hopefully at the enormous walls, 60 feet high, in which no gate or gap showed. No, it's going to be a little hard to climb into there. There's an old man going across the field. No, not that one, the very green field. Let's ask him. So they left their satchels lying on the short turf that was half wild thyme and went down. But they were not quite quick enough. Before they could get to him, the old man had come through the field of young corn, clambered over a stile, and vanished between the high hedges of a deep-sunk lane. They've left their satchels behind. They are not within sight of the road any more, methinks. So over the stile and down into the lane, oh, now they're in sight of that road, down into the lane went the children and caught up with the old man just as he had clicked his garden gate behind him and had turned to go up the bricked path between beds of woodruff and anemones and narcissus and tulips of all colours. Do you know what those flowers are, what those plants are? You can look them up. I'm actually going to write their names down because I want to know what they look like, because I like gardens, as you can tell from the picture behind me. So we've got woodruff, and we've got anemones, I know what they look like. And narcissus and tulips. And narcissus, I'm thinking, it's not necessarily a daffodil. Maybe the one that I think of as being a jonquil. The little clusters of flowers that hang. Anyway, we'll carry on. So, walked up the path between beds of woodruff and anemones and narcissus and tulips of all colours. His back was towards them. Now it was very difficult to address a back politely. So you will not be surprised to learn that Edred said hi and Elfrida said, "Hello, I say." The old man turned and saw at his gate 2 small figures dressed in what is known as sailor costume. Actually, is that what they look like they're wearing in this other one here? Yes, the big collar there. She's got one under her hair as well. Typical of the era. So there you go. 2 small figures dressed in what is known as sailor costume. They saw a very wrinkled old face with snowy hair and mutton chop whiskers. That means he had the sideburns that come down here and they're quite fluffy. Of a silvery whiteness. There were very bright twinkling blue eyes in the sun-browned face, and on the clean-shaven mouth a kind, if tight, smile. "Well," said he, "and what do you want?" "We want to know," said Elfrida. "About the castle," said Edred. "Can we get in and look at it?" "I've got the keys," said the old man, and put his hand in at his door and reached them from a nail. "I suppose no one lives there," said Elfrida. "Not now," said the old man, coming back along the garden path. "Lord Arden, he died a fortnight ago come Tuesday, and the place is shut up till the new lord's found." That kind of sounds like it might have part of it that's actually livable. "I wish I was the new lord," said Edred as they followed the old man along the lane. "And how old might you be?" The old man asked. "I'm 10 nearly. It's my birthday tomorrow," said Edred. "How old are you?" "Getting on for 80. I've seen a deal in my time. If you was the young lord, you'd have a chance none of the rest of 'em ever had, you being the age you are." "What sort of a chance?" "Why," said the old man, "don't you know the saying? I thought everyone knowed it hereabouts." "What saying?" "I ain't got the wind for saying and walking too," said the old man and stopped. "Leastways, not pottery." He drew a deep, I think he means poetry. He drew a deep breath and said, When Arden's lord still lacketh 10 and may not see his 9 again, let Arden stand as Arden may on Arden knoll at death of day. If he have still skill to say the spell, he shall find the treasure, and all be well. Ooh. "I say," said both the children, "and where's Arden Knoll?" Edred asked. "Up yonder." He pointed to the mound where they had had lunch. Elfrida inquired, "What treasure?" But that question was not answered then. "If I'm to talk, I must sit me down," said the old man. "Shall we sit down here or sit down inside of the castle?" 2 curiosities struggled, and the stronger won. They want to know now, but they also want to know what inside the castle's like. "In the castle," said the children. So it was in the castle, on a pillar fallen from one of the chapel arches, that the old man sat down and waited. When the children had run up and down the grassy enclosure, peeped into the ruined chambers, picked their way along the ruined colonnade and climbed the steps of the only tower that they could find with steps to climb, then they came and sat beside the old man on the grass that was white with daisies, and said, "Now then." "Well then," said the old man, "you see the Ardens, they was always great gentry. I've heard say there was always been Ardens here since before William the Conqueror, whoever he was." 1066, said Edred to himself. That's school history. William the Conqueror, 1066. The Battle of Hastings. And they had their ups and downs like other folks, great and small, and once when there was a war or trouble of some sort abroad, there was a lot of money and jewellery and silver plate hidden away. That's what it means by treasure. And the men who hid it got killed. Ah, them was unsafe times to be alive in, I tell you, and nobody never knew where the treasure was hid. Did they ever find it? Ain't I telling you? And a wise woman that lived in them old ancient times, they went to her to ask her what to do to find the treasure, and she had a fit directly, what you'd call a historical fit. Nowadays actually they mean hysterical, not historical. That what you'd call a historical fit nowadays. She never said nothing worth hearing about without she was in a fit, and she made up the saying all in pottery while she was in her fit, and that was all they could get out of her. And she never would say what the spell was. Only when she was a dying, Lady Arden, that was then, was very took up with nursing of her, the old lady, and before she breathed her lastest, she told Lady Arden the spell. He stopped for lack of breath. Oh, wonderful, great castle picture. Fabulous. It'll give me what it is in a moment. Castle ruins in Trevejo, Spain. There you go. Wow, that's cool. And I'm going to find you another one just because I haven't finished reading the chapter. That's really cool, that one. I like all of these castle ones. I liked the garden ones that we had before too. But I particularly, that was quite impressive, that. No, not that. Sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. I want this one. Yes, thank you. And then I need to get this information and this information. Scrolly, copy link, and then I can click there to get rid of the advert and give you this bit down here. Sorry, looking in the wrong place. Put this in here, and then you can, whoop. There you go, link is good to go. Jigsaw link. Here we go, carrying on. And what is the spell? Said the children, much more breathless than he was. Nobody knows, said he. But where is it? Nobody knows. But I've heard say it's in a book in the library in house yonder, but it ain't no good because there's never been a Lord Arden come to his title without he's left his 10 years far behind him. In other words, they've all been very old. Edred had a queerer feeling in his head than you can imagine. His hands got hot and damp and then cold and damp. I suppose, said he, you've got to be Lord Arden. It wouldn't do if you were just plain John or James or Edred Arden, because my name's Arden, and I would like to have a try. The old man stooped, caught Edred by the arm, pulled him up, and stood him between his knees in front of him. Let's have a look at you, sonny, he said, and had a look. Aye, he said, you're an Arden, for sure. To think of me not seeing that. I might have seen your long nose and your chin that sticks out like a spur. I ought to have known it anywhere, but my eyes ain't what they was. If you was Lord Arden, what's your father's name? His christened name, I mean. Edred, same as mine, but father's dead, said Edred gravely. And your grandfather's name? It wasn't George, was it? George William? Yes, it was, said Edred. How did you know? The old man let go Edred's arms and stood up. Then he touched his forehead and said, I've worked on this here land, man and boy, and I'm proud I've lived to see another Lord Arden take the place of him as is gone. Look alive, boy, don't garp like that, he added sharply. You're Lord Arden, right enough. Sorry, I'm just writing down a couple of words there that I've not seen written like that. I can't be, said Edred. Auntie said Lord Arden was a relation of ours, a sort of great-uncle cousin. That's it, missy, the old man nodded. Lord Arden, christened name James. He was first cousin to Mr. George, as was your grandfur. His son was Mr. Edred, as is your father. The late lord not having any sons, nor daughters neither for that matter, the title comes to your branch of the family. I've heard Snigsworthy, the lawyer's prentice from Lewis, tell it over 50 times this last 3 weeks. You're Lord Arden, I tell ya. There you go. Oh, and you can do your jigsaw if you'd like to, those of you who are still here. You don't have to. Just wondering. If I am, said Edred, I shall say the spell and find the treasure. You'll have to be quick about it, said Elfrida. You shall be over 10 the day after tomorrow. So I shall, said Edred. When you're Lord Arden, said the old man very seriously, I mean when you grow up to enjoy the title, as please God you may remember the poor and needy, young master. That's what you do. Good on him. If I find the treasure, I will, said Edred. You do it whether or no, said the old man. I must be getting along home. You'd like to play about a bit, eh? Well, bring me the keys when you've done. I can trust you not to hurt your own place. That's been in the family all these hundreds of years. I should think you could, said Edred proudly. Goodbye, and thank you. Goodbye, my lord, said the old man, and went. I say, said Edred, with the big bunch of keys in his hand, if I am Lord Arden. You are, said Elfrida. I'm perfectly certain you are, and I suppose I'm Lady Arden. How perfectly ripping. We shall shut up those lodging children now, anyhow. What's up? Edred was frowning and pulling the velvet covering of moss off the big stone on which he had absently sat down. Oh, I've got the next picture for you. No, not that one. This one. Get it to the right size. I think I need to actually... Sorry, just trying to see over my book stand. I need to actually figure out how to size these so that they all stay the right size. So there you go. This is the old man talking to Edred, and there's Elfrida sitting on the grass. And yes, I'm just showing it to you now because that's where it is in the book. Do you think it's burglarish, he said slowly, to go into your own house without leave? Not if it is your own house, of course not, said Elfrida. But suppose it isn't. They might put you in prison for it. You could tell the policeman you thought it was yours. I say, Edred, let's. It's not vulgar curiosity, like Auntie says. It's the spell I want, said the boy. As if I didn't know that, said the girl contemptuously. But where's the house? She might well ask, for there was no house to be seen, only the great grey walls of the castle, with their fine fringe of flowers and grass showing feathery against the pale blue of the June sky. Here and there, though, there were grey wooden doors set in the grey of the stone. Must be one of those, Edred said. We'll try all the keys and all the doors till we find it. So they tried all the keys and all the doors. One door led to a loft where apples were stored, another to a cellar where brooms and spades and picks leaned against the damp wall, and there were baskets and piles of sacks. A third opened into a tower that seemed to be used as a pigeon cot, like a dovecot, but for pigeons, a nesting place for them. It was the very last door they tried that led into the long garden between two high walls, where already the weeds had grown high among the forget-me-nots and pansies. And at the end of this garden was a narrow house with a red roof wedged tightly in between two high grey walls that belonged to the castle. Oh, I like the sound of that. All the blinds were down. The garden was chill and quiet and smelt of damp earth and dead leaves. "Oh, Edred, do you think we ought?" Elfrida said, shivering. "Yes, I do," said Edred, "and you're not being good, whatever you may think. You're only being frightened." Elfrida naturally replied, "I'm not. Come on." But it was very slowly and with a feeling of being on tiptoe and holding their breaths that they went up to those blinded windows that looked like sightless eyes. The front door was locked and none of the keys would fit it. "I don't care," said Edred. "If I'm Lord Arden, I've got a right to get in, and if I'm not, I don't care about anything, so here goes." Elfrida almost screamed, half with horror and half with admiration of his daring, when he climbed up to a little window by means of an elder tree that grew close to it, tried to open the window, and when he found it fast, deliberately pushed his elbow through the glass. "Thus," he said rather unsteadily, "the heir of Arden Castle re-enters his estates." He got the window open and disappeared through it. Elfrida stood clasping and unclasping her hands, and in her mind trying to get rid of the idea of a very large and sudden policeman appearing in the garden door, and saying in that deep voice so much admired in our village constables, "Where's your brother?" No policeman came, fortunately, and presently a blind went up, a French window opened, and there was Edred, beckoning her with the air of a conspirator. It needed an effort to obey his signal, but she did do it. He closed the French window, drew down the blind again, and, "Oh, don't let's," said Elfrida. "Nonsense," said Edred. "There's nothing to be frightened of. It's just like our rooms at home." It was. They went all over the house, and it certainly was. Some of the upper rooms were very bare, but all the furniture was of the same kind as Aunt Edith's, and there were the same kind of pictures. Only the library was different. It was a very large room, and there were no pictures at all. Nothing but books and books and books, bound in yellowy leather. Books from ceiling to floor. Shelves of books between the windows and over the mantelpiece. Hundreds and thousands of books. Even Edred's spirits sank. "It's no go. It will take us years to look in them all," he said. "We may as well look at some of them," said Elfrida, always less daring, but more persevering than her brother. She sat down on the worn carpet and began to read the names on the backs of the books nearest to her. Sorry, I'm just checking what the time is. Began to read the names on the backs of the books nearest to her. Burton's Anatomy of Melon something. Anatomy of Melancholy, maybe? She read, and Locke on Understanding, and many other dull and wearying titles, but none of the books seemed at all likely to contain a spell for finding treasure. Burgess on the precious metals beguiled her for a moment, but she saw at once that there was no room in its closely printed brown spotted pages for anything so interesting as a spell. Time passed by. The sunlight that came through the blinds had quite changed its place on the carpet, and still Elfrida persevered. Edred grew more and more restless. "It's no use," he kept saying, and "let's chuck it," and "I expect that old chap was just kidding us. I don't feel a bit like I did about it," and "do let's get along home." But Elfrida plodded on, though her head and her back both ached. I wish I could say that her perseverance was rewarded, but it wasn't, and one must keep to facts. As it happened, it was Edred who, aimlessly running his finger along the edge of the bookshelf just for the pleasure of looking at the soft, mouse-coloured dust that clung to the finger at the end of each shelf, suddenly cried out, "What about this?" and pulled out a great white book that had on its cover a shield printed in gold with squares and little spots on it, and a gold pig standing on the top of the shield, and on the back, the history of the Ardens of Arden. In an instant it was open on the floor between them, and they were turning its pages with quick, anxious hands. But alas, it was as empty of spells as dull old Burgess himself. Burgess, I think, was a school book writer in this context. It was only when Edred shut it with a bang and the remark that he had had jolly well enough of it that a paper fluttered out and swept away like a pigeon settling on the fireless hearth. And it was the spell. There was no doubt about that. Written in faint ink on a square, yellowed sheet of letter paper that had been folded once and opened and folded again so often that the fold was worn thin and hardly held its two parts together, the writing was fine and pointed and ladylike. At the top was written, "The spell Aunt Anne told me, December 24, 1793. And then came the spell. Hear, O badge of Arden's house, the spell my little age allows. Arden speaks it without fear. Badge of Arden's house, draw near. Make me brave and kind and wise, and show me where the treasure lies. To be said, the paper went on, at sun-setting by a Lord Arden between the completion of his 9th and 10th years. But it is all folly and not to be believed," the lady who wrote it said. "This is it right enough," said Edred. "Come on, let's get out of this." They turned to go, and as they did so, something moved in the corner of the library, something little, and they could not see its shape. I've got a picture. I have. And I'm just going to make it slightly bigger and then turn it on so you can see it. There you go. They're looking at the book. There's Edred, and then there's Elfrida, and there's their satchels. I'm going to turn the picture off again. Right. Neither drew free breath again till they were out of the house and out of the garden and out of the castle and on the wide, thymy downs with the blue sky above where the skylarks sang and there was the sweet, fresh scent of the seaweed and the bean fields. "Oh," said Elfrida then, "I'm so glad it's not at midnight that you got to say the spell. You'd be too frightened." Well, I think she'd be too frightened, not necessarily that he would be too frightened, but maybe he would, I don't know. "I shouldn't," said Edred, very pale and walking quickly away from the castle. "I should say it just the same if it was midnight," and he very nearly believed what he said. Elfrida it was who had picked up the paper that Edred had dropped when that thing moved in the corner. She still held it fast. "I expect it was only a rat or something," said Edred, his heart beating 19 to the dozen, as they say in Kent and elsewhere. "Oh, yes," said Elfrida, whose lips were trembling a little. "I'm sure it was only a rat or something." When they got to the top of Arden Knoll, there was no sign of sunset. There was time, therefore, to pull oneself together, to listen to the skylarks, and to smell the bean flowers, and to wonder how one could have been such a duffer as to be scared by a rat or something. Yay! Puzzle done! Wonderful! Well done, you guys. To be scared by a rat or something. Also, there were some bits of sandwich and crumbled cake, despised at dinner time, but now somehow tasting quite different. I'm just going to finish the paragraph and then I'll read the title of the picture for those who are wondering what we've been doing. Oh, no, it's gone. It's done. Actually, I've got the information elsewhere. Somehow now tasting quite different, probably because they're hungry. These helped to pass the time till the sun almost seemed to rest on a brown shoulder of the downs that looked as though it were shrugging itself up to meet the round head, the round ball that the evening mists had made of the sun. Round red ball. The children had not spoken for several minutes, their 4 eyes between them fixed on the sun, and as the edge of it seemed to flatten itself against the hill shoulder, Elfrida whispered, "Now," and gave her brother the paper. They had read the spell so often as they sat there in the waning light that they both knew it by heart, so there was no need for Edred to read it. And that was lucky, for in that thick pink light the faint ink hardly showed at all on the yellowy paper. Edred stood up. "Now," said Elfrida again, "say it now." And Edred said, quite out loud and in a pleasant sort of sing-song, such as he was accustomed to use at school when reciting the stirring ballads of the late Lord Macaulay, or of the moving tale of the boy on the burning deck. I'm guessing that late Lord Macaulay was somebody who wrote poems. Macaulay. Sorry, somebody else I need to look up. Or the moving tale of the boy on the burning deck. "Hear, O badge of Arden's house, the spell my little age allows. Arden speaks it without fear. Badge of Arden's house, draw near. Make me brave and kind and wise, and show me where the treasure lies." He said it slowly and carefully, his sister eagerly listening, ready to correct him if he said a word wrong, but he did not. "Where the treasure lies," he ended, and the great silence of the downs seemed to rush in like a wave to fill the space which his voice had filled. And nothing else happened at all. A flush of pink from the sun setting spread over the downs. The grass stems showed up thin and distinct. The skylarks had ceased to sing, but the scent of the bean flowers and the seaweed was stronger than ever, and nothing happened till Edred cried out, "What's that?" For close to his foot something moved, not quickly or suddenly so as to startle, but very gently, very quietly, very unmistakably, something that glittered goldenly in the pink, diffused light of the sun setting. "Why," said Elfrida, stooping, "why, it's..." And that's the end of the chapter. And I'm not reading any more today. There you go. How's that for suspense? Leave you on a cliffhanger ending. What an author. Goodness me. I'm just going to tell you about this puzzle. Dorney Castle. Dornie. Take the photos from Peter Tootle. And I can give you the link to where that photo is from. There you go. It's a Flickr photo. I don't even know if it's still there, actually. It may or may not be. So Dorney Castle is in Scotland. That's about the only extra bit of information I can give you. But the name is familiar for some reason. And I'm just checking. I just noticed that my Discord was telling me something, but it was just telling me that I was live, so I didn't really need to know that. I shall leave you with the thought that the next chapter is called The Moldy Warp. And you might want to look up that word, or you might want to remember from some of your children's stories, if you had old children's stories for small children when you were growing up. A secret lady of it, perhaps. Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out, won't we? Next time. Dun, dun, dun. I love it. I actually really enjoy this lady's writing style, more so than I had remembered. The one the book that she has written, that Ms Nesbit has written, that most people are familiar with, even if they've never read the book, but they've seen either a TV series of it or a children's movie of it, is The Railway Children. Famous, absolutely, completely and utterly famous for having written that book. But I'm delighting in the fact that we've got other books of hers to read. I was actually thinking about reading a different story today, one of the Dr. Dolittle stories, but I thought, well, the last book we had was something that we had that for most people was very unfamiliar. It was that New Zealand author Edith Howe's, which I actually quite enjoyed that story. That was quite good. So I felt it was a good idea if we went to something that was written by an author that we're a little bit more familiar with, just so we have a bit more. I don't want to have stuff feeling too unsettled by doing completely unknown all the time, if I can help it at this stage. Maybe later on we will. Anyway, so yeah, we'll see how we go. Yes, great author. Love her books. I am going to be reading more of her books. There are more books available yet. Some of them are standalones, and some of them are, we've read the 3-book series ones, and now this is a 2-book series, and then there's another 2-book series, and then I think she's got a couple of other ones that are actually standalone books, but I will intersperse them with other books as well. So we haven't run out of them yet. Yay! Really, really excited about that. Thank you all for being here. It's really great having you as part of the stream, having the jigsaw puzzles happening, having me being able to, now I'm getting a bit better with actually sorting out the photos instead of having to look them up every time. I've actually figured out a way that I can actually have them all ready to go and just have to click through them at different times. And I really enjoy reading to you guys, and hope that the weather has not been too bad for you to be able to hear what I'm reading. So just a wee reminder, if you are watching this on Twitch and you want to catch up on any of our previous books, go over to my YouTube channel, and the link is, most of my shortcut links that you see typed in there, you can actually type in as well. My YouTube channel is there. If you're on Twitch, you can see that in the chat. And I have the books saved as playlists there. So you go to the playlist page of it. And I did actually change, oh no, I haven't changed it there. That link is wrong. I'm going to correct that. I'll correct it right now because otherwise I'll forget. I knew there was another one. Doesn't take much to correct it. My actual screen name name over on YouTube is now the same as my screen name here, jevvv. So I'm going to do my YouTube link again. Yes, I got it right this time. I'm not sure if it would have taken you to the correct one before or not, but now it is. So it's jevvv is the channel name, and that should take you straight there. I still haven't yet figured out what's wrong with my Discord link. If you're already part of Discord, that's great. You can find me on Twitch. I've got a link to my various social media accounts on my Twitch page. You can find me on Twitter, sorry, if you want to talk to me, if you aren't already part of Discord. But it's just Jev. But there's 3 V's. Jev is always, when it's my name, is always written 3 V's if you're trying to find me. So there you go. Just because it is, that's the way it is. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to actually be part of me reading live and doing the jigsaw puzzles, because you won't be seeing those at the moment, you're just seeing this video window. If you want to see the jigsaw puzzles and play them, or put comments in as I'm actually reading, look things up, give me the information, all that sort of stuff, then just follow the link that's on my YouTube channel for my Twitch channel. And then you'll be able to take part in it. If it's the time of day when it works for you. And I'm sorry, I'm not changing the time of day that I read just because that's the way life is for me. This fits into my day, and that's how it happens. Otherwise, it's not sustainable, and I won't be able to read it. So, look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for being here. Look after yourselves. If you're not well yet, I hope you're well soon, and I hope if you are well that you stay well. We do have time changes. We go between summer and winter time. It's a 1-hour shift for daylight savings. We are currently in winter time. But if you look on my schedule page on Twitch, it will show you what the right time is for your time zone. Thank you very much all for being here, taking part, being a lovely community to be part of. And in the meantime, I'll see you next time. Hopefully that'll be on Wednesday, unless anything else happens, in which case I will change it on my schedule if I can, or I'll post on Instagram, which cross posts to my Facebook and also my Twitter account. It cross posts to both of those, not straight away, but it does actually eventually get there. So we'll see you next time if there's nothing stands in the way. So that's 2 days from now. So tomorrow's Tuesday, next day's Wednesday. I stream 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.